Şimdi sıfırdan DevOps'a sunumunu yapmak üzere Microsoft Amerika DevOps lideri Donovan Brown'u sahneye davet ediyorum alkışlarınızla.
Good morning, everyone. Let's try that again. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Perfect. My name is Donovan Brown. I kind of feel like I'm dreaming because I'm from Texas and I'm supposed to be asleep right now. The jet lag is kind of throwing me off. But I am a principal DevOps manager at Microsoft. You might also know me as the manager of the League of Extraordinary Cloud DevOps Advocates. I know, it's a mouthful. So most people just call us the League. It's the team you see behind you. We span dev and ops, Windows to Linux, Jenkins to VSTS, and app service to containers. If your goal is to run your code in Azure, it is my team's job to make sure that you can employ DevOps best practices when you do so. I guess put another way, our job is to rub a little DevOps on it and make it better. And that's what we do every single day. If you need our help, we are very, very active on Twitter. You can use a hashtag, actually that hashtag. And if you use it, it's sort of like a bat signal from Batman. When you use it, our entire team sees a room light up in our team room, and we all go read your tweet. If we do not know the answer, we will reach inside of Microsoft and add someone to this thread that knows the answer for you. We are very, very passionate about connecting with our customers. Now, as a DevOps person, I believe that when you implement DevOps, you have an opportunity to change the way that your business works. You can move at a speed that you've never moved before. And I recently found a video that I think articulates and captures what your company will look like before and after it implements DevOps. And I want to share that video with you right now.
But Holland comes in for a pit stop. Time to refuel and change tires. Lou Moore himself changes the tires. Only 4 crew members, including the driver, are allowed to work on the car. It's a tense time. Holland stays in his seat, anxious to get away. Let's watch. Tires are changed at last. A crewman polishes the windshield as Holland moves away just 67 seconds after he stopped.
I thought that video captured what it used to be like developing software and deploying it, and what it can be like if you implement DevOps. So I tweeted that video not too long ago. What was interesting is I got challenged on if the second video added any value. First person said, but they added so many more people. Why did they add so many people? Of course they're supposed to go faster. Another person pointed out, but they didn't refuel the car. So they didn't add any value. They just changed the tires. The more I thought about it, the more wrong they were. It's like, you guys are completely missing the point. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought it was a perfect example of what your company looks like. So let's go ahead and dissect what they said. They increased the number of people. Does anyone remember a company called Compact Computers? Does anyone remember that company? Just a few of us? Okay, so all the old people remember, right? Because that's where I started, right? I started at Compaq Computers, and I remember back then, when it was time for me to deploy software, it was me and the production server. That was it. I went over to the production server, I typed in my credentials, I deployed my software. Today, that's not the case. There's developers, there's operations, there's network admins, there's security, there's auditors, there's QA people. There are so many people involved in deploying software today that I think this is a perfect analogy for what it used to be like when I deployed software, me swinging a hammer at the server, right? And what it is today, automation. And that's what I saw there. I didn't see an increase in number of people. What I saw was an increase in the tools that we use, the processes that we use, the automation. To me, this is continuous integration. This is continuous delivery. This is infrastructure as code, configuration as code. To me, they weren't people. They were the processes that we employ to make sure that we can deploy software faster than we ever did before. But even if you look at them as people, it's a perfect analogy because today there are more people involved in deploying software than any point in our history. They didn't refuel the car. My first instinct is, let's say that they did refuel the car at the same rate that they did in 1950. If you look at that video again, he's done filling the car halfway through the pit stop. So even if we refuel the car at the same rate, the second pit stop would have been done in half the time, right? It's a huge increase in time. But if you're worrying about them filling the car, you're still missing the point. The point is they did not have to refill the car. See the difference? No, they didn't fill it because they didn't have to. They had shifted left all this innovation, all this technology that allowed the car to go further on less. If they needed fuel to finish the race, they would have added fuel to the car. They simply don't need the fuel because they started doing all these things earlier that made the car more efficient. We do this every day. When you start writing unit tests, when you start doing security scans, if you start putting that into the hands of the developer so that you can do it sooner, you get your code further down the pipeline before you have to start with these innovations and these problems. So this is exactly what we do every single day. We shift left so that you're not swinging a hammer anymore, so that your company can move faster, so that your company can do things like this. Take what used to be a mundane, painful existence and start doing it really, really quickly, in the blink of an eye, taking what used to be manual and making it automated. The more I watch this video, the more and more I realize that it's a perfect example. If you'll notice for a second, if we go back, these two people here, they never move. Why would you have two people looking at a pit stop that never move? How are they adding value? When you do DevOps correctly, you need to monitor your application while it's running in production to make sure that you've delivered value, to figure out ways that you can go even faster. This is the monitoring system. They watch this 2-second pit stop to see where they can shave another 1/10 of a second, another 1,000th of a second, so that their next pit stop is even faster. That is exactly what you're supposed to be doing in your DevOps pipelines today. If you'll notice, this person here has a jacking up the rear of the car. A lot of our customers say, Donovan, what do I do if something bad happens? Can I roll back? Do I have any safety mechanisms? This person has a jack that never gets used, but would get used if this jack failed. That is exactly what we do today in our DevOps pipelines. Having alternate paths, having rollback mechanisms. The more I look at this, the more I see ways that this is exactly what we do today. So I want to help you figure out how you can go from swinging a hammer to doing a pit stop in 3 seconds. So let's talk about that. Now, this demo that I'm going to do for you today, I need some help. We call this little guy Dono Dude, and I'm going to have to introduce him to you right now. Everyone take out your phone, and I need you to go to this URL right here. Make sure you type it in all lowercase. And what you're going to be able to do is you're going to vote on what OS I use, what language I program in, and what platform I target. You get to pick the demo that I do at the end of the session. I have no idea what demo you're going to pick, but if you go there, and here it's a little easier to see here, go to that one, make sure you type it in all lowercase, and start picking your platform, your language, and what OS you want me to use. And up here on my stage, I have a Mac running parallel, so I have a Linux machine, a Windows machine, and a Mac machine. I can program in any language that you want and deploy it to any platform that you want. And as they challenged me, I will try to do it in less than 15 minutes. Okay, so go and do your voting. I'll leave it up there one more time for everyone to take a chance. But what I like about this demo is that it gets me really excited because I honestly have no idea what demo I have to do. But I'm confident in the tools and the products that we produce at Microsoft that no matter what you choose, I can do it from any platform in any language. Okay, so everyone go there and vote. Now, a couple of times already, I've used the term DevOps. But what does it actually mean? If I were to ask 5 people what DevOps means, I'd probably get 10 answers from those 5 people. Right? No one has a good, clear way of actually concisely saying, this is what DevOps is, this is the goal. When I joined Microsoft a little over 4 years ago, I was asked to define DevOps for Microsoft. It took me 30 days to write the sentence you're about to see, because I took it very, very seriously. I didn't want to run and Google with Bing someone else's definition. I didn't want to just regurgitate what someone else had said. I wanted to internalize the true meaning of DevOps. And that's what I reflected over my own career at Microsoft, my own career at Compaq, my own career across. It was 20 years I've been writing software. So I thought to myself, why is DevOps even a word? Because think about it. 10 years ago, DevOps wasn't even a word. So why is DevOps a word now and not a word 10 years ago? I was always taught you fix what hurts most first. 10 years ago, it was the way that we wrote software that hurt the most. Everyone remember waterfall, right? You take all your requirements up front. You do all your design up front. You code for months or years. You test it for about an hour, and then you throw it over the fence. And you wonder why it doesn't work. That is what hurt most. We had to figure out, how do we fix that? So we came up with Agile, Scrum, test-driven development. These different methodologies that allowed our teams to produce value very, very rapidly. Producing value and delivering value are not the same thing. Just because our teams are able to produce the value, but it still takes weeks or months to get that value into the hands of our users, we're failing. And that is why DevOps is important now. We fixed the writing of the software, but we still struggle with deploying the software. And using DevOps best practices like automation, configuration as code, infrastructure as code, we can now deploy our code faster than we ever had. But the goal of the software never changed. It's to deliver value to our end users. So after reflecting over my own career, I basically wrote this sentence. My slides are going the wrong direction. That sentence. DevOps is the union of people, process, and products to enable continuous delivery of value to our end users. I don't care if it's containerized or not, mobile or not. I don't care what language you program in or what platform you target. The reason that you wrote that software was to deliver value to your end users. How often should you deliver that value? You should deliver it continuously. Because if you don't, and your competition does, your customers become their customers. And getting a customer back is very, very difficult. It takes 3 things to do this right: the people, the process, and the products. Hardest part is the people. You were all smart enough to come here. Some of your colleagues are back at work. Couldn't figure out a way to get a day off of work. How could you not figure that out? They're clearly not very smart people, right? You were smart enough to get a day off of work. You understand that this was valuable, that you needed to be here. But when you go back to work all excited about DevOps, all excited about what Microsoft can do for open source, you're going to meet people who were not here. People who do not get it, who do not understand the goals and the purpose of doing this. So when you go back to work, do yourself a favor. Don't try to convince them. Don't ask them for permission to set up continuous integration. Just do it. Because it's your nights with your family, it's your weekends with your families that you're going to be getting back when you implement DevOps best practices. So don't accept any excuse on why you should not be doing the right thing for your company. You got to get your people to believe it. And trust me, results speak louder than anything else. You can't convince them with words, but when they see a continuous integration build producing out quality code, that they will understand. The process, we already understand this. Agile, Scrum, test-driven development, we understand those things. So it's not a problem at all. Continuous integration, continuous delivery, infrastructure as code. I see some of you nodding. You know what I'm talking about. Are you doing this at work? Nope. Why not? If you know the process and you know it's the right thing to do, why are you not doing it? Because of the people that you work with. So stop asking them to implement it and implement it yourself. And I'm going to show you just how quickly we can do that here in just a second. The products, man, there's so many products, especially in the open source world. There's products every day popping up that can help you solve the problems that you have when you're trying to develop software. So you combine these three things together, and you'll be able to continuously deliver value to your end users, which is the goal of what we're talking about here today. Why is DevOps important? Because your competition is already doing this. You do not want to be the last one in your industry to figure this out, to understand how important this is, because you'll be the first one that gets displaced. In the United States, and I know you have Uber here as well, Uber has decimated the taxi company. The taxi companies simply cannot respond fast enough. And they don't even respond in the right way. Many taxi companies want to get Uber banned, not realizing the way that you fight Uber is with a better app, with a better experience, with better customer service. But instead of doing any of those things, which are in their complete control, they're trying to get legislation passed to stop this competitor because they know that they can't beat them because they don't even know how to fight them because their people don't get it. Right? It's the software that is going to be a strategic advantage for you to displace your competition regardless of what industry that you're in. Look at bookstores. We used to have bookstores all over the place in the United States. Amazon ran them all out of business. Amazon was so clever, they started selling books online, ran all the brick and mortar out of business, and then started building brick and mortar bookstores again. How weird is that, right? But they saw what they needed to do. They thought differently. Does everyone know who Walmart is, right? Walmart, largest retailer in the world. How many of you know who Jet.com is? Not as many, right? Just a few of you. Walmart was founded in 1964, 65 timeframe, I believe it was. They're almost 50 years old now. It took them 50 years to become the largest company in the world. Jet.com, on the other hand, went from nothing to being worth $3.3 billion in 12 months. 12 months, not 40 years, 12 months. They went from we don't exist to someone writing a check for $3.3 billion to buy them because their people thought differently. They were cloud native. They were built in the cloud, born in the cloud. They were doing DevOps from the very first moment that they started deploying software. They moved so fast that their competition simply could not keep up. One of their competitors, lucky enough, had an extra $3.3 billion in the bank and wrote a check for them. You know who it was? Walmart. Right? Walmart, lucky enough, was big enough to buy their competition. But you can't keep buying people at $3.3 billion a check because the next Jet.com is coming. There's a group of people in their freaking garage right now using VSTS for free about to just disrupt the retail companies. So Walmart can't simply buy everyone. They have to change the way that they do business. They have to change the way that they develop software so that they can actually beat the next Jet.com and not have to buy them. Your competition is already doing this. You got to move faster. Gone are the days where you can fail fast. You need to succeed fast. Because failing is no longer an option, especially on our mobile devices. For every app on your phone, there's at least a dozen that want to do the exact same thing for you. So why would I accept a crappy app on my phone? I'll uninstall it, I'll give it a 1-star rating, and I'll go to one of the other dozen people who want to do the exact same thing for me. You can't fail anymore. So how do I move faster, yet mitigate my risk? You do that through automation. You do that through getting the human beings out of the process. The more human beings you have involved that are actually touching the zeros and ones, the more risk you incur. So what we try to do is move faster and reduce human error by simply automating as much as we possibly can. This is why it's important. And again, it doesn't matter if you're open source or not. This is true, and everyone needs to make sure that they understand why we're doing this here. So let's talk about DevOps, the whole cycle. DevOps begins with an idea. The whole reason of you writing software is because someone has a brilliant idea that they think is going to make our company rich, and we have to have a way that we can track that idea. We need to create a product backlog. We need to track our work and make sure everything gets done on a timely fashion. Most of our customers figured this out already. They might be using Jira. They might be using VSTS or Team Foundation Server. They might be using issues inside of GitHub. But they know how to plan and track their work pretty well. And then it's time for you to actually get down to development. Writing your unit test, writing your code, running it through a CI system. Again, most of our customers are really good at this. They're using Jenkins, or they're using something like VSTS or some other type of CI system that upon every single commit, downloads the code, builds it, tests it, and packages it for them. They pretty much got this down pat too. Where I get involved with most of our customers is here. Donovan, we are now producing value very, very rapidly, but man, oh man, is it hard to get it deployed anywhere. We can't get it deployed into dev. We have to stand up 3 different QA environments, and getting it into production has so much red tape that they won't even let us automate that process right now. So this is where I get called in. And again, there's lots of products out there, open source or otherwise, but this is where you need to make sure that you focus your time. This is the portion that hurts the most right now for most of our customers. And what we do is we go in and we figure out what hurts the most, and we take that one item. Do not try to take this on all at once. Doing so is a recipe for disaster. Find the one thing that hurts the most, fix that one thing, and then what's going to happen is something else in your process is now going to hurt the most. You can then go focus there. And it's really easy for you to slowly build up your DevOps pipeline. You don't have to do it all at once. Now, I said that you have to monitor and learn. When you're running an agile project, you're using something called a product backlog. It is a laundry list of any and everything that you want your software to do, and it should be in priority order. How do we know if it's in priority order or not? Most people just use their gut, right? The product owner says this is most important, so the team does what's most important. They throw that over the fence, and they go and grab the next thing. But do we know if we're doing the right thing or not? You don't if you're not monitoring it. If you add a new page to your website and no one accesses that page, you did not deliver value. You just copied a random file to the server. But if you deployed a new file to your web server and 90% of the people who visit your website also visit that web page, you probably delivered value. By monitoring, you're no longer guessing on what is the most important thing for you to do. If what you did was important and your statistics say so, do more of that. If what you did no one views, no one uses, do less of that. And reevaluate your product backlog based on the learning of the monitoring to determine if you're really doing the most important thing or not. Right? This is a cycle that never ends. And you're probably using a lot of the tools that are popping up right now. And that's fine. But I'm here to tell you that you don't have to use different vendors to build an entire DevOps pipeline, regardless if your code is private or sitting inside a GitHub today. And you don't have to rip and replace all of this. Every one of these items can be replaced with a product from Microsoft. And don't forget that Microsoft is the #1 contributor to open source in the world, so we get this. We understand, and we're not trying to lock you in to any of our products. What we're trying to do is reduce the overhead of building a DevOps pipeline. When every tool in your DevOps pipeline comes from a different vendor, it becomes very difficult, or it becomes someone's job, to stitch all that stuff together. And instead of you adding value to your product, you're now maintaining this tool chain because vendor A upgraded, and now vendor B doesn't work anymore. And now you got to go update vendor B, and that broke vendor C now. And here you are spending more time managing your tool chain versus actually doing what you were hired to do. So what I would do is start using a product called Visual Studio Team Services. It works for any language targeting any platform. Those 2 statements are the most important things I'm going to say to you today. What we do at Microsoft now works for any language targeting any platform. It doesn't matter if you're using Rust or Perl or PHP, Python. You do not have to be doing .NET. You do not have to be on Windows, and this stuff actually works. And what we have is 2 products, actually, one called TFS and one called VSTS. One you install yourself if you want to keep it on-prem. The other one we actually host for you in the cloud. And what do you get out of it? You get everything that you need to turn an idea into a working piece of software. Everything. Source control, both centralized and distributed. How many of you have already moved over to Git? The brave souls in the room? Yep. Git's hard to learn, and it can be expensive, so we did 2 things with it. We brought it inside of every IDE that we support so that you don't have to go to the command line and remember all those cryptic commands. and we give it to you for free. So if you're paying for Git today, stop it. It's silly to pay for Git. The only person that will know that you switched to VSTS is your accountant, because they stopped writing the check for your repositories. If you want to store it in GitHub, that's great. We'll build it directly from there as well. But if you have private repos, you should not be paying for them. We'll give them to you for free. We give you source control, agile planning. This is for your bugs and your issues and your Kanban boards and your product backlogs. We give you complete build automation, deployment automation, test automation, release management, package management. It is literally everything that you need to turn an idea into a working piece of software. And if you have an MSDN, you get all of this stuff for free. If you don't have an MSDN, you and 4 of your friends can go create one of these for $0 and 0 cents. It costs nothing to get started. The 6th person that we add, boom, that's where we make all of our money back, right? I'm just joking. It's like $9 a person. We don't charge much for that 6th person all the way to the end, right? So it's very, very cheap and very easy for you to get started using our tool set. Again, any language, any platform. I cannot stress this enough. As you saw, if you went and voted, those were not just .NET languages. You had Java on there. You had Node.js on there. That list will eventually grow to PHP and Python. I just haven't had time to go learn those languages yet. The only reason you saw the 3 that you did is because those are the 3 that I know. It's a completely open source product that I'm going to show you. So if you want to go and contribute to it, be more than happy to add those other languages for me. Inside of VSTS, the product I just talked about, and the one that I'm going to show you today that supports open source projects, we give you build agents. These are computers sitting there waiting for you to do the builds for you. And if you need to build on a Windows machine, clearly we have Windows machines running in Azure. Those machines you do not have to install. You don't have to pay for them. You simply say, I want to do a build on a Windows machine. We will go spin one of them up, compile your code on there, run your test, give you the artifact, and then delete that machine. We did the same thing for Linux. So if you want to run your Node.js and build it on a Linux machine, or you're adamant that your Java has to be built on a JVM for a Linux machine, that's fine. We'll spin up a Linux machine, build your code for you, destroy that Linux machine. How many of you guys are into mobile development? Anyone doing mobile? iOS, just a couple of you guys? So you guys also need Mac OS. So inside of VSTS, we've added Mac OS hosted agents. We have all 3 platforms for free running inside of our VSTS offering so that you can build on Mac, Windows, and Linux without installing a single thing. And you get access to these for free inside of Microsoft. So when I say any language, any platform, we are dead serious. Okay? So I'm going to prove that for you right now. So now it's time for me to do the demo. I got to go figure out how you guys voted, and whatever it is that you asked for, I'm going to go off and try to produce for you. So let's go see what you voted for. Wow, there's a lot of people here. Oh, cool, I get to use a Windows machine. I hate Mac anyway. Yes, I have a Mac. I work for Microsoft, so I hate Mac, but it's all good. So I get to use a Windows machine. We're going to do .NET Core, and we're going to do Docker. Okay, cool deal. I'm surprised you chose .NET Core, but that's kind of awesome that we're in an open source community and you understand .NET Core is full-blown open source. So since you want to deploy to Docker, I'm not going to use AKS, only because the tool that I'm going to use doesn't currently support it, but it will. It's actually in development. So I have my own Docker host, but everything that you saw earlier is still true. You have to build the image, you have to put the image in a registry, you then download that image onto your host, and you run it. I happen to have a host already running. That's here. My host just says this, hello world. In a few minutes, it will not say hello world. It will be a full-blown application that I'm about to produce for you, thanks to what you asked for, and we're going to replace this app with a real app, okay? So that's our goal. So let me move over to my Windows machine. So here I am, and I'll prove it to you. This is a full-blown Windows, right? And what I have now is I basically have PowerShell. Open source seems to love the command line. So everything that I'm going to do right now, I'm going to do from the command line so that you don't have to go inside of some clunky UI and figure out what's going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an open source tool called YoTeam. So Yeoman is a code generator, and what it normally does is just generates code for you. But I'm a DevOps guy. Code is the easy part. What I need is the entire pipeline. I need the project, this continuous integration, the whole 9 yards. So what I'm going to do is I wrote my own generator and said, I want to generate more than just the code. I want to generate everything. Now, what I've done is I told it that I have a project, a Visual Studio Team Services account, and the name of it's called Tool Tester West US. And it said, okay, great. I know where that is. Let me go and find all of your different queues for you. The queues are those things I told you about that allow you to build your source code. And as you can see, we have one that's hosted, that's Windows. We have one that's Linux Preview, that's the Linux machine. Here's Visual Studio 2017, and then here's Mac. And there's also one called Default, which we're going to use. Not only do we give you 4 different platforms in the cloud for you to build upon, we also give you a default pool where you can install any machines that you want, on-prem or in the cloud. Even though VSTS is in the cloud, you don't have to deploy into the cloud. If you have on-prem assets that you want to deploy to your own private data center, you can still use VSTS in the cloud and use the default pool to install your own images. What I did is I actually stood up machines in Azure, installed this agent on there, and that agent is now going to be able to be utilized. Why am I using my own? Because I built a big, ginormous machine in Azure because I don't pay for my Azure account. So I build big, big machines in there, and I have like 20 or 30 different agents on the same machine, and they're all just waiting there for me, so we're going to use mine instead. Now I get to choose what language. You chose .NET. You'll notice on here that I actually have .NET Framework as well, but I don't have it running on Windows containers yet, so I didn't give that one as a choice for voting. I wanted to do one that I have running on containers as well. So you can see there's 4 languages there: .NET Core, Full Framework, Node.js, and Java, which we could do any one that we want. We're going to call this ASP Demo, which is great. And now I get to choose where do I want to deploy it. Again, in my voting app, I only give you 2 choices: App Service or Docker. And you chose Docker, so we're going to choose Docker. But as you can see there, there's lots of different choices. AKS is coming. So the Azure Container the Azure Container Service, Kubernetes Service is coming. I'm waiting on the RM team. We're working together to make this as easy as possible. So soon you'll actually have another option in there that says AKS. But you chose Docker host. Now, I actually have a Docker host in the cloud that I just connected to that says Hello World in. That's all I'm doing here is telling them where that is. Now it says, okay, Donovan, your Docker host happens to be secure, which means for me to connect to it, I have to know what your certificates were. All I'm doing now is saying, on my hard drive, I've saved my certificates, and they're in this folder, so that the tool can then connect to my Docker host securely and do all the magic it needs to do there for me. You could use Docker Hub if you wanted to, but I'm going to use Azure Container Registry. A registry is where you take the images that you build and you store them there. And then when you want to run them, you basically say, here's the URL to the image that I want, and then your host will pull it down and run it for you. The reason I'm going to use ACR, or Azure Container Registry, is because my host is in Azure. So why wouldn't my registry also be in Azure? Putting them close to each other means that downloading an image will only take a second, because they're literally on the same backbone in the exact same place. So I'm going to use that one. It needs to know my username, which I already have entered in here, and it needs to know my password. So let me go ahead and paste my password in here. Now it's asking me what port I want to run it on. If I wanted to change the port, I could, but I want to run it on port 80, and I don't need to install the dependencies. So what this tool is about to do is it's going to go off into Visual Studio Team Services, and it's going to create an account for me. Or I should say a project. That project is going to contain the source control, my work item tracking, my automated build, my automated deployment, my package management. That whole list of items that I showed you that TFS and VSTS give you, it's going to go off and create a project for me right now that has all that stuff in it. Once that project gets created, it's then going to go back in and create the build for me. It's going to clone the repository down to my machine. It's going to create a service endpoint. A service endpoint is basically saying, I'm going to take the files that you told me for your Docker host. I'm going to then give them the VSTS in such a way that VSTS can now talk to your Docker host securely, but you never have to share that secure information with anyone. Now, I also have to talk to my registry. For me to take the images that I'm going to build as part of my CI process, I need to then put that into the registry, and I need to authenticate against that as well. Then it goes back in and creates a CI build for me. It then creates a release definition for me, and then even gives me a sample project for me to do a hello world kind of project with. All I have to do now is cd into that and do a git push. Now, when I do a git push, it's taking the code that it generated for me, and it pushes it to the remote repository in VSTS. Because VSTS has a trigger set up that says every time you see a commit to that repository, please run a CI build, there's a build running right now. That build is downloading my .NET Core application. It's going to run tests against it. It's going to create an entire package. And then it's going to go off into release management and deploy that code all the way into that Docker host where we can go back to that hello world and refresh it, and it won't say hello world anymore. It'll be our application. Every time a developer on your team makes a change to those files, it will automatically be deployed to that Docker host without them lifting a finger. If you have to do anything more than commit code to a repository to deploy code into production, you still have work to do. All the developer should ever have to do is simply commit to the repository. The rest of it should be completely automated for them. Now, at this point, if I wanted to, I could take you into VSTS. But again, I know how much you love the command line as open source people. So I'm going to stay at the command line and still try to show you all the cool stuff that I've done for you already. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say GTI. You probably think I meant to type git, but I did not. GTI is a command I actually want to run. PowerShell now works on Mac, Windows, and Linux, if you're not aware of that. So PowerShell core works everywhere. What that basically means is you can now type dir on a Mac and something will happen, which is awesome, right? So if you are a command line person, you normally type in ls all the time. You don't have to type that anymore. You can type dir, and even on a Mac, you'll get back a file listing, which is awesome. But why do I care that PowerShell is on Mac, Windows, and Linux? The reason that I care is because if you actually run this command here, this is a PowerShell module that I put in open source that allows you to use your VSTS account from the command line. So you don't ever have to go to the VSTS UI anymore to be able to track your builds, track your releases, check in code, all that stuff. You can do it directly from here. For example, if I were to do a git project, I'm sorry, let me connect to, it even told me what to do. It says you did not add an account yet. So let me go ahead and add an account. And I'm going to do tool, and then if I do a git project, and now it's going to come back perfect. So now that is the project that we just created, the ASP demo that was not there before. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this as my default project, which means every other command that I run now, I want you to run against that one, so I don't have to pass it as a parameter. And now I'm going to say git build. And fingers crossed, this build was successful. So I had a CI build automatically kick off because I committed the code. And as we can see, it was already successful. If I needed to look at the logs here, I can use normal PowerShell. I can say, why don't you get me the build, and I want you to pipe that to git build log. And what will happen here in just a second is it's going to dump the entire build log right here in my command window. So if I had a build fail, and I wanted to quickly see what the error was, I don't have to go into the UI, click my little life away, trying to find the build logs. I can simply dump the build logs right here in my command line, see what was broken, make a correction, and then commit it back in again. Another thing that we can do, which is pretty interesting, is that we can actually get the release as well. So if I were to come here and paste this command in, it's actually going to get me the release definition. And as we can see, it's deployed into a dev environment, and that dev environment has already been successful, which means if I were to come back over to here and refresh this page, what used to say hello world will now be a completely different application. This is an ASP.NET Core application built with Visual Studio Team Services. I could have developed on any machine that I wanted to and automatically deployed into a Docker container. If I were not talking, if I were not presenting to you, the amount of time it takes me to actually do this entire thing is 4 minutes. 4 minutes from the time I start typing to the time I see code running in here. And I can do this for any language and any platform. Now, I have to be perfectly honest. I'm a little disappointed that you chose Windows and you chose .NET Core. So we're going to go do something else. So what we're also going to do, because I still have plenty of time, is we're going to come over here to a Linux machine, and we're going to do another pair of languages, just because we can. So here I am on a Linux machine. This is Ubuntu 16.04. I'm going to use the exact same command that I used on a Windows machine, so you don't have to learn anything new. I'm going to use the exact same account, but let's go and do, well, what the heck was second? Let's just do second place. Second place was, good Linux and Java, and we're going to do PAS, okay? So from here, we're going to go ahead and use the exact same thing. It was Java, and we're going to call this Java demo. And we're going to go to app service. So now what it's saying is, hey, for me to go to app service, I need to know what your Azure account is. So here it shows me all my Azure subscriptions. I'm going to use D Brown. I'm going to create it up manually, so I need to give it my service principal key. And that should be good. And because it's Java, I have to give it a group ID, and I don't need to install them. So what's happening now is we're now going to deploy, instead of just going into a Docker container, we're actually going to use Azure App Service, which is sort of like a virtual directory that you can host all sorts of stuff inside of. Java, Node, Python, and instead of you having to worry about Docker images, which some of you just simply aren't ready for. I understand Docker's the hotness right now, but if you're not ready for Docker, don't worry about it. We still have App Service, which is a great offering. You can still do auto-scaling and all the cool stuff like that, but you don't have to know anything about Docker or images or containers. So I'm going to do the exact same process, but we're going to have a much more elaborate pipeline built for us. And in the last few minutes here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you inside of VSTS and show you both of these different projects so you can see exactly what got built for us as well. Because this is a really cool one, because this one has approvers, multiple environments, all sorts of cool stuff that's going to happen. So while that's happening, let's switch over to another machine. And we're just going to go show project. And it's going to launch a browser for me, and in that browser will be Visual Studio Team Services, so I can show you visually what's actually being built for us. So as you can see here, this is your local dashboard. It shows me exactly the README file, so this would be like perusing your GitHub repo if you wanted to. In here, I also have additional dashboards that I can actually use if I wanted to come customize this. I can have my build output, my release output. I can customize these widgets any way that I want. I can come in here and add new widgets to this dashboard. Looking at monitoring information, application insights, it's highly customizable. I also have my repository. So again, this is just a Git repo. And inside of this Git repo, I have all of my code. I can have all the history of all the commits that I made. And this is just a normal Git repo. And if you wanted to clone this, which is really cool, is check this out. It's not just Visual Studio in there. So if you're using IntelliJ, Eclipse, Ruby, PyCharms, PHP Storm, WebStorm, we can actually deploy your code directly inside those IDEs for you without you ever having to go to the command line to clone your repo. In addition to that, we also have work item tracking, so if you wanted to have Kanban boards, backlogs, all this information is available to you. You got to remember, none of this cares what language it is. Right? Your work item tracking doesn't care if it's Java or JavaScript. It just wants to track your work for you. Same thing with your source code. Your source code doesn't know what type of file it's storing. It just knows that it's storing files for you. So again, it's completely agnostic. Here we have our build, and I'll show you what the build came out of our last one. So we come over here to our build, and our build system is drastically different. So if you haven't seen our build system in a while, I encourage you to go take a new look at it, because there's some really cool, amazing stuff that you can do with our build system. For example, here we have a build, tailor-built for .NET. So I install Bower onto the machine, I run Bower, I install the proper version of the .NET framework, I do a .NET restore, I run my test, I build my image, I push my image to a registry, and now everything is ready for me to deploy into my Docker container. If I were to go back and look at my summary, which is really nice, is I'll be able to see all this nice richness that I have in a build summary. Here I'll be able to see what work items I was working on, what build output that I have as artifacts, what my test results were, and in certain languages I can even calculate code coverage. As you can see here, my code coverage percentage is here as well. I can see work items that I was working on, and down here I can see my release, which is the deployment of my software. Now over here I can actually see the release that deployed my image into my Docker host for me. So, and just like I did before, I can come over here and edit this. And what I really like about our task library is that it contains things for all different languages. And if you don't see what you need, we have a marketplace for you as well. So I'm going to go and edit this real quick. And if I go to my task, as you can see, it's just the same task. Remove the running. So this removed the hello world that was already there, and this ran the new version of the image for me. If I wanted to add new items, there are literally hundreds and hundreds of different items inside of this particular library that allows you to manipulate every asset inside of Azure, some on-prem, and even our competitors have places as well. If I were to go over here and browse our marketplace, just to show you how good our tools are, as you can see here, even our competitors have actually written extensions for our tool chain. So you should be in Azure, we all know that. But if you happen to have anything in AWS, you can still use everything from Microsoft to get there. Any language, any platform. Octopus Deploy, SonarQube, Excel, whatever it is that you want to deploy to, we give you access to it from inside of Microsoft. So one other thing I want to do here is, I'm going to go over here one more time, excuse me. And I want to show you another pipeline that got built. So if we were to come back here, And I'm going to show you the Java project that we built as well, very quickly here in the last couple of minutes. So here we have a Java project that was built for us that was not there a moment ago. And what I wanted to show you is this release is far more complicated. This release actually has 3 different environments. In between the environments, it also has approvers as well. So if I come here and go to Edit, you'll see that we actually have a dev, QA, and a prod environment. And you can build a really complicated pipeline that takes your code through every single environment and even assign approvers to you as well. So again, 4 minutes, and you can build a pipeline for any of the languages that I showed you. Both of these are open source, the PowerShell module and the GitHub repo for Yo Team. So if you're interested, you can definitely go and contribute to that. And what I want to do here real quick is leave you with a slide that has some resources for it. So if you want to learn more about what I do, again, my name is Donovan Brown. I'm very active on Twitter, so if you are on Twitter, I highly encourage you to follow me. That's the hashtag that gets the attention of my entire team. And I film a lot of stuff on Channel 9 that talks about a lot of the stuff that I was on stage with. So if your peers aren't here, but you want to share with them what I've talked about, I highly encourage you take them to some of these shows that we have on Azure and on Channel 9. That can actually help them catch up with you guys. So that's my time. Thank you so much for having me.